I'm here at the beautiful and tranquil Oulton Hall on the outskirts of Leeds to speak to one of the last Englishmen to win the Ashes. He's had the honour of coaching his country and remains the only British man to have played and coached in Australian grand final victories. It is, of course, Malcolm Reilly.
I remember you.
Talented.
Competitive.
Tough.
Made my dreams come true.
Masterful. Fearless.
Proud.
The thrill of them all.
Stubborn.
Resourceful.
The real deal.
Will tell them I remember you.
Hello and welcome to Super League Supermen, and my guest this week, Malcolm Reilly. Malcolm, pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks, Brian.
In the summer era with full-time professional footballers, I'd like you to start off by giving the viewers a bit of an indication as to what rugby league was like for a player back in the 60s and 70s when you maybe had to combine work with playing.
Oh, mate, it was much harder. I would obviously like to have been full-time, like the current mob of players are, but you know, I had various jobs, mechanics job, and then eventually moved into. In those days, the game was a lot more physical. Referees didn't protect you like they do in the modern game, and there was a fair few people after the game knew they'd been in a rugby league game. It looked like they'd been boxing, you know. They'd broken noses and cuts, and we gave a good account of ourselves, but lost the game, and we had a lot to back up in the second test, which we did, and the third test we beat them convincingly.
You were a member then of the last team to win the Ashes. You wouldn't have thought then that it would be 40 years with Great Britain still awaiting an Ashes win. How significant was that victory in your career when you look back on it, winning an Ashes in Australia?
It's a shame that we haven't been able to repeat that, and you know, all those years ago. We've been very close in the past, but it was a significant part of my career. Something, you know, your career's on it's just on building blocks, and you know, to beat Australia gives you that much bit more confidence, you know, in your ability. And we came back to England that year. We toured in May, came back in August, played the World Cup in September, and we lost. We beat Australia in the World Cup in the first game, and then we played them in the final and actually lost the game. But I was then back in Australia, January 1971, playing with Manly.
Did you find it a step up, Malcolm, or did you think you were able for that level of rugby league straight away?
No, I
Brew sponsors Super League on Sky Sports.
Welcome back to Super League Supermen and my special guest, Malcolm Reilly. Malcolm, we talked about your playing career and your move from player into coach. You left Castleford and you moved on to Halifax and started to establish yourself as a first-team coach. But there was a calling. You decided to take your coaching skills and move to the other side of the world. Can you tell me how the move to the Knights came about?
Well, at the time I was coaching Halifax in Great Britain and thoroughly enjoying what I was doing. You know, Halifax had a great board of directors and they gave me full support, and it was going to be a project over probably 3 or 4 years. But I took on, you know, people like Andrew Jones and Matthew and Paul Harrigan and some of the outside backs, Adam Muir, Mark Glanville, Robbie O'Davis. There was currently at that stage 2 internationals, and after the first year, when Super League blew up, we finished it with 6 internationals in the Newcastle side. And I sort of empowered the players because I wasn't an Australian guy. I said, look, this is not my team, you know. A lot of coaches tend to talk down and, you know, I'm not discriminating at all, but David Wake was sort of a school teacher approach where I asked them questions and reassured them in relation to their confidence. And they just grew in stature and started playing a brand of football that the town had never seen for a long time.
Now, whether it was conscious or subconsciously, you have an intimidating presence. And I mean that in a positive sense. And when I read about some of the Newcastle players' reflections on your first day as a coach, they were running around the Broadmeadow racetrack, and they said at the finishing line, and they were training, they said, as hard as they've ever trained, was this large, imposing figure with sunglasses on, staring at them, walked away halfway through the session, and the next day sent letters to every one of the players saying unless they upped their ante, they were out.
Brian, I did that, yeah, because I knew I knew the level of their fitness, and I knew what I could do, and I expected a lot better of professional footballers, even though I was into my 40s. So I said, look, that's not going to win as a competition. We aren't going to get any better until, you know, we become a little bit more fitter. As you know, personal expectations and pride mean a lot in rugby league, and that's what I wanted to get through the message. So I did exactly that. I sent them a personal letter saying that it wasn't good enough, the standard of fitness that I'd, you know, witnessed, and they've got to up the ante. And
that continued throughout your period at the Knights. Whenever there was a challenge set in the gym, be it on the rower or be on the bike, you always put your hand up.
Yeah, I must admit, I am a little bit competitive.
Well, it worked wonders. Talk to me about 1997. We had the Super League war, but you still had a job to do at Newcastle. They had never won a premiership in their short existence, and you drove them all the way that year.
Yeah, it was on the back of some superb team performances, and really a gritty performance from one Andrew Johns. He broke 3 ribs in the semi-final against North Sydney, right at the end of the game, and backed up the following week in the grand final. And he had injections. Painkillers injections before the game and at half time, and he was travelling okay. But when he came up at half time, they re-injected him, and I was watching this procedure, and I saw the doctor, and the needle went in pretty deep. Let me tell you, it was a huge needle too. And I thought, well, he knows what he's doing. And I went up to the stand, and he didn't come out. And apparently he'd punctured his lung in 2 places. So he's got 3 broken ribs, a punctured lung in 2 places. This is in the major semi. Doesn't take part in the second half of the game. Goes to hospital the following Thursday, inflates the lung, still got 3 broken ribs, and turns out to play in the grand final.
Set up a winning try.
Set up a winning try. He was coming off at one stage. He just said to Mark Wright, the trainer, or Mark got on the headphones to me and just said, look, he's gone, he can't do any more, he's in loads of pain. I said, just tell him to turn around. He said, because we can't win this game without him. and he just swung round, went back out to play, and the rest's history. He made a break in the last 6 seconds or 20 seconds of the game, and Dan Albert scored a try with 6 seconds left remaining on the clock, which was just, you know, fantastic. It was. You couldn't have written a script to do that, but I mean, what a gutsy performance from the kid.
You played for your country with distinction, Malcolm, and moved into coaching, and then the opportunity arose to coach your country, something you were never going to turn down. No,
I was just thrilled to be asked to do the job, and once again, you know, we were pretty successful. We came very close. I think in 1990 at Old Trafford, we won the first test at Wembley, and then we lost at Ellen Road and went to Old Trafford. And at full time, I think it was 16 or 12 apiece or 16 apiece. I know we finished up losing in injury time, 2 minutes into injury time, by a Ricky Stewart try, which he threw outrageous dummy, and Mal Meninga scored, you know, and that was the end of it. But, you know, I look back and have nightmares over it. We should have won that game.
So close in the Ashes. I think you're well placed to talk to us about the situation in international rugby. I want to ask you a few different things. First and foremost, I'd like you to tell me where you think Great Britain or England is at the moment.
I've not seen a lot of games on TV, but what I've seen, the intensity is far less than it is in Australia. And although it's entertaining and there's tries being scored, the defence is pathetic. And, you know, they're not going to improve internationally until, you know, we stop seeing this 56-10 or 62, you know, 12. They've got to get a bit of pride back into defence and the intensity in the game. Otherwise, internationally, you know, you just won't be able to compete. It is the competition that's at fault. You know, whether there's sufficient quality players in it, I'm not sure. Obviously, there isn't. But, you know, the New Zealand players that have played in the comp in Australia have adjusted, and now they're an international force, and we're just lagging behind because our competition over here is just not as intense or defensively capable of meeting the criteria.
What sort of a person do you think it takes to coach an international team? What's your take on it?
Oh, look, I think a lot of it's motivation and confidence to be able to instill a simple game plan with quality players, which at international level you would hope to have. Just reassuring the players they're able and confident enough to go out there and do the business together. And that's something we did develop. When we went out there in '88, when I first took on the Great Britain job, we lost the first 2 tests. The first one was at Lang Park, I think it may have been. But we came back and won 26-12 in the 3rd test, and all of a sudden the guys sort of took on board a huge dose of confidence and self-belief, and then we backed it up when Australia came over the following year and beat them at Wembley. So all of a sudden we've got back-to-back successes against Australia in test matches. Unfortunately, not in the same test series, but yeah, the players. I just loved the involvement with them.
With all this wealth of knowledge that you have and all this experience, Malcolm, do you still feel that you can contribute to our game?
Look, I obviously do, you know, but I don't want to get involved 24/7. And, you know, a lot of clubs probably, because I've been international coach and coached at the highest level, I don't know whether they'd feel intimidated if I was trying to help them out. You know, they'd probably feel threatened. But I do love the game. I like talking. I like the involvement with players. But I don't want to get I know what it's like, and I just don't. There's plenty of things I can be doing rather than worrying about complex personalities and looking after players 24/7.
But at the international level, if there was a slot found for you to come in and assist with the motivation, as you say, and maybe share some of your experiences, you'd be willing to accept something like that, or at least look at it?
Absolutely, Brian. Yeah, I think you know, one of the aspects I've been able to transfer to players is the mental toughness side of the game, and those expectations of, you know, pride and passion.
Malcolm, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on, a true legend of the game, somebody I'm delighted to meet face to face for the first time. Wish you all the best, and I hope we do see you involved in Rugby League again. Thank you very much for coming on Super League Supermen. Join me next week when my guest will be Lee Radford.
I copped a bit of flack for that, you know, being a senior player, should I have, you know, lashed out. It's a contact sport, and, you know, adrenaline was flowing. I'd sort of copped a couple of whacks to the head on the floor, and that's, you know, I reacted the way I did. I was disappointed with obviously being sent off, but, you know, I'm not disappointed with the way you know, I reacted. Maybe the punch is probably the worst 3 punches I've ever thrown.